Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. We have quite a bit to discuss, but I wanted to first of all just let you all know I really appreciate all of you for continuing to serve on the board and all the work you're doing. Everybody's doing a great job, and I want you to know that I appreciate all of you. Um, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first thing that we need to do is vote on the minutes from the May 12th meeting that Valerie sent out. Did everybody have a chance to look at them and see if were there any corrections that were needed? I'm seeing some shaking of heads. Okay. So I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from May.
Okay. So Susan made the motion. Is there a second?
I can second it.
Debbie Hall seconded. Okay. Everybody in favor of approving the minutes from the May meeting, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. All right, Debbie, take it away.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Find the right one. Okay, I sent out the financials yesterday. So sorry, it was I don't like to send them out that late. I like to try to give people a chance to actually look at them. But my mom was here, so that was nice to have her. But it kind of puts you behind the 8 ball a little bit. No big change in any of our balances. The checkings is lower than it was last month, only because we've paid a bit of the beanies Mark wanted for the turkey trot. So we've put down a little bit on that. So the checking's a little bit low, but as you can see, it's still high for a checking account. We haven't gone below maybe 60 since we've did the move to put some of it in the money market. So I was going to see if we could watch it this year and see if we can even put more toward savings or money market, just to get a little bit more interest under our belts. There's that. Okay, and go. Okay, so the race numbers are here as of just the other day. I know that it's not, I did it into the beginning of June, not necessarily just May. So it looks like we're all coming out way ahead on all of the races here. Even the ones that are upcoming, we're not too far down. We've been doing some race expenses, of course, and the income's not there yet. But even down here at the bottom, we're doing really well. And hopefully that will continue and even be better, as the same as last year with the turkey trot, which is hopefully going to be a big moneymaker for us again, just an even more moneymaker than we expected, like last year. That would be good. Let's see. We're doing well with spending as well. The awards banquet, we went over a little bit. That's every time we've seen that. Social runs, sometimes we always watch that one pretty close. We're doing okay. 59% of our spending so far this year, and we're only at 40 or so percent of the year. So we'll keep that in mind as we go forward, kind of watch it a little bit and see how that looks. Equipment and supplies, where was it? Jeff, we bought flags. Is that what we bought? Jeff, the equipment manager, we have some flags there that he bought. And other than that, it looks like we're pretty much on spot. Our professional fees, that's there a little bit. Our rent is right where it should be for our storage. So it looks like we're pretty much on. And then bottom line's the same. Does anyone have any questions or anything right now?
Joel, did you have a question?
I did. So I think that we had talked about this last time. So if you look at the kind of projected budget for autumn leaves, it has like a negative number. Is that with the stipend that we had kind of worked in, or like the kind of extra that we have?
Yeah, because we reduced all the race fees by $10. So that means that we would anticipate you would have a small loss, but that's going to be paid for with the race subsidy.
Gotcha. That's what I thought. That's what I wanted to just make sure. Thank you.
And a lot of the events, a lot of the events that we've had, even though we expected them to lose money, we got more participants. So we actually ended up making more money than we thought. So they didn't lose money. So they didn't need the subsidy. So that may happen with autumn leaves. Don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of an experiment for us to do it this way, kind of our budgeting. It isn't necessarily, we'll see how it comes out as real income or expenses as we do next year's taxes. But right now it's looking pretty good the way we're anticipating having a loss, but not having a loss, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Email me or call or yeah, I guess email me if you have any questions, or I'm happy to answer them all.
Right. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the first, welcome, Penryn. The first item we have up for discussion is I just wanted to remind everybody, I know I mentioned this last month as well. Just be sure to be checking your board member emails or your race director emails on a regular basis, because it can be frustrating if somebody's trying to reach you either through your race email and they don't get a response for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's really important for all of us to make sure we're tracking or monitoring our emails so that we can respond to requests both from our own group or from people from outside the organization who are trying to reach us and ask questions. And it just can be frustrating if you don't get a response. So just a reminder about that. And if you are having trouble accessing your emails, be sure to contact Drew Fleischer, because he's our tech person and he can help you access this if you have any problems with that. Okay. Do you introduce Penryn? Yeah, Penryn, welcome. This is further down an election update, but Penryn has volunteered to possibly run for the board in our December election. So I invited her to attend the meeting to see how we work and how we do things and what we do. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties, so I was a little late. I had to borrow my husband's computer. Mine is on strike, apparently.
No worries. No worries. We're glad to have you. I will actually just skip down to that one really quickly. Last time I had asked anybody, if you know anybody who wants to join the board or volunteer for anything, to let me know. And I sent an email out to all of our members asking if they wanted to volunteer. And I have, at this point, 4 new people who have confirmed they would like to run, be on the ballot, and 1 who's still deciding. She's going to look through and see if she can make it fit in her schedule. But Penryn was 1. Donald Raymond is another. Yasmin Brandon, Nancy Fisher, and Suzanne Ryerson are all thinking about joining the board. So if you know them, answer any questions that they have. Basically, what I did is I went through the volunteer list and looked at people who had volunteered over the last couple of years, multiple times, or who had just participated in a lot of things. So they know the club, they know what we do, and said, hey, would you like to join the board? So get some new blood in here.
Yeah, I know Nancy Fisher and I know Suzanne. So that's kind of cool that they're willing to come forward.
Yeah. Yeah, Nancy specifically said, I'm injured right now, so I have time. The next item I had on the agenda is basically, I've talked about this with Mark, I talked about it with Carrie. There's 2 models for race directors. There's the model where we have co-race directors and they kind of split the responsibilities between them. And then we have Mark Barrett's model, and he's aware about everything I'm going to say. His model is more, he's the race director, and then he has a bunch of super volunteers that he delegates different tasks to, like finish line lead or food lead or whatever. And what I would like to do to be able to kind of attract some more volunteers to help out and to learn the process and possibly step into the role of race directors in the future. What I'd like to is, instead of calling people super volunteers or leads, I'd like to actually call them assistant race directors. And give them the same benefits that the race directors and the board members and the coordinators have, so that if they're doing a large part of the work of the race, they should be rewarded for it. So at the same time they're learning things, they could also get the benefit of putting in a lot of the work. Because somebody who's being the finish line lead at Vernonia, they're doing a lot of work, and so they should be rewarded accordingly. Somebody who's doing the food for Turkey Trot should be rewarded accordingly. So, or somebody who's setting up the course, responsible for the set up and tear down and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to get your ideas on this. We're having a race director meeting at the end of the month on June 28th. And so I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this idea. What do you think of it? Don't all talk at once.
So I really like that idea, but does it have to be race specific? Or if they're assistant race director, they could be an assistant race director for, multiple races. Same title, but they're not tied to just a single race. Thoughts on that?
My impression is that even if you were only an assistant race director for one event, you'd still get the benefit because you're doing a lot of the work that a race director does. It's just delegating it out. Instead of having co-race directors, having one race director and assistant race directors who are basically doing the work of co-race directors, depending on how the main race director delegates the responsibilities. So they could be, some people like Carrie does food for multiple events. She could be an assistant race director for multiple events.
But ideally, if you're assistant race director and you have certain skill sets, that apply to all the races, right? Because we want consistency. Yeah.
And that would also tie into what we were trying to do with the findings a volunteer team specifically for course setup and teardown.
Yep.
If they do that for multiple events, they could be considered assistant race directors for each of those events. If that's
But it sounds like if somebody was an assistant race director and they have a skill set that they want to use potentially in multiple events, they would still need to coordinate with the primary race director for the
yes.
Oh yeah.
and do that. So
yeah.
I'll share a little bit with the group. This is one of the things that was brought up at the convention about just and I hope it's part of the discussion that's going to ultimately unfold, but it's more protection for the organization and the event that if you have a race director or an assistant or two race directors, I will just be very candid right now. I'm considered a race director in Ralph's Run, but I've never been able to actually act in that capacity. And so I actually don't want to have the title if I don't have the responsibility. I don't want the risk if I'm not able to be a part of planning the event. And so that's part of, I think, this whole goal is to try to figure out how do we not only have a way to train people into different events, but I think also how do we make sure that we're documenting so that if something happened to that primary race director or one of the race directors, that there would be somebody else in the event tied to the planning of the event that would be fully versed in what's been planned for, so that the event goes on seamlessly in the event that there was an unfortunate situation. And I think that there was something like that a number of years ago that we were fortunate, right? And that it carried through, but I think it's a multifaceted approach to how we do race directors.
Yeah. Ideally, what we would have is co-race directors for all of our events. And they would actually be truly co-equal race directors and just split the responsibilities up. But if one person had to step back because something happens, and that happened at Hag Lake several years ago, Mark Barrett fell off a ladder and Ralph Brown was able to step in and take over. We don't have somebody like that right now who could really step up and take over something necessarily. We could probably do it as a group and get it done. But we don't have somebody who really has the experience. And so the goal is to, if we can encourage people to kind of get their feet wet as an assistant director in a specific area and then learn some of the other things that they might be able to step up and become co-race directors for our events in the future.
And Carrie, to your point, if you're the race director, but Mark doesn't let you and it's name only, that's a disservice to you.
So thank you.
Yep.
I mean, And it is what it is. I've just so everybody knows, I have volunteered for all those events, and Mark has plugged me in where he's felt like he's needed me for the event, which is totally fine. But it's recognizing that if you're going to be called something, then you should be able to do it. And if you're not called a certain, I don't care what I'm called. I'm not a titles person. I mean, I'll just jump in and help with whatever. So this isn't about do you have the right title, but I also think that it is a little bit, because if you're planning a race and you're considered an event director or race director, I think that there's some exposure, right? I mean, a race director has a certain level of exposure, and I think that that needs to be understood and just, documented. More importantly, protection for the organization, that if something unfortunate would happen, that we also are there to step in for that person that's also been leading the charge and make sure that the event continues. So anyways.
I totally agree with Mark T.
Mhm. Thank you.
You should be getting the responsibility and the exposure.
Yeah, and Mark's not here. I think I understand Mark's style, that he's kind of I want to do it on my own, and he feels more comfortable taking on that responsibility, and he's more of I'm going to delegate a task to someone, and once I delegate it, I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that part of it. It's like you still have to think about it, but he just takes the approach of, I trust people to do what I've delegated to them, and that it's going to get done. I will tell you, I'm co-directing with Hal right now on Pumpkin Ridge, and I have a very set list of things that I'm doing. Hal has things he's doing, and we're keeping each other in the loop. I text him all the time saying, here's what's going on, permits are done, and we respond that way. So I'm trying to keep him very, very versed in what I've done. So if something were to happen, he knows what's happening. So FYI.
And I will say, because I met with Mark for breakfast a week or two ago, and we discussed all of this. And I said that's my goal, is by kind of relabeling the people he delegates to with these titles, it's kind of giving them the authority to learn and grow. And his responsibility would be to let them know what he's done. Like the master list, everybody has access to the master list of what has to get done. And even if he's delegating them a certain thing, he's also keeping them informed as to what he's doing.
Was he open to that?
Oh yeah, he was open to it. I mean,
Yeah.
It took a little convincing, but he's open to it. The other main thing, and this is for all race directors, which is going to be mentioned at the race director meeting, is that everybody's to-do list and everybody's kind of event Bible that they have, many of them have it on notebooks that they've leafed through and stuff like that, that all needs to be put into our Google Drive. We do have a shared Google Drive where we have race event instructions, maps, checklists, contacts of who do they go for their permits and all that kind of thing. That every event needs to be putting their stuff online. So if something happened like what happened to Mark, we would have access to what that race involves and what needs to happen and what timelines. And Mark said he had that and he needs to get it there. He totally agrees with that. So it's kind of a long-term goal where I'd like to see us headed, get that all done. So I'll be reminding all the race directors to do that as well. But this is just a start, mostly to kind of make sure we develop some volunteers into becoming co-RDs in the future. And also just getting everybody trained on every race's kind of checklist and to do and know what's happening and stuff. So
in most organizations, they say you should always be training your replacement. And that's the sign of a healthy organization, is you bring people along, and it's a good thing. So, I think it's great.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm hearing that it's okay if we want to start offering those benefits to anybody who then is considered an assistant race director at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was going to chime in. I'm sorry, I'm driving.
Sure.
Tracy, this is Deb. I really think it's important for us to bring up people and get them engaged. I really agree with Carrie that I feel like if you're going to call someone an assistant race director, you have to let them get engaged to have some skin in the game, so to speak. Because I have people who volunteer multiple shifts and they're not called assistant RDs, or who they are like an aid station captain because they're doing a double shift, which is a little bit different. Like it is a very set, like I can just write you an instruction sheet and you can do the thing, or you're someone who's done that thing before and you kind of know how to do it. Whereas I as much as we can bring other people in, which I think we really need to encourage, but let them be in some way, like have them part of the planning process so that there's something that they learn how to do. Because, well, none of it's rocket science, but it is hard to manage it all yourself. So whatever we can do to like loosen the grip of someone having to do it all themselves, their tight vice grip on it, I think is just to everybody's benefit. Rather than I do think there's a difference between a super volunteer who does a long shift and someone who is engaged in taking on a big sort of section of the race, like the race course director. You know, I could see like Vernonia, like if you have someone who's an RD, assistant RD, or an RD that is like the course director, you know, that they're making sure everything's all set up and that, you know, the aid station stuff is all dropped off and all that, like that makes sense. That's something that someone just takes the bull by the horn and they do that whole thing. And I don't know if my thoughts are clear, hopefully on that.
They're good. They're good. And I think that's a key distinction between somebody who is just a volunteer who's doing a lot for the event versus somebody who is actually in charge of something and who also is possibly the backup for other people, but they're also they're being brought into the process, so they can see the master list. They can see that, okay, the timelines for everything, and I know I need to get this done by this date. And if Carrie's working on something, but if something can't get done, an assistant director might be somebody who can then take on something that can't get dropped, but somebody else has to drop it.
They're not just showing up on race day for doing a lot of stuff. They're helping in the planning process.
And the whole thing, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Deb's point there. Like, you know, and I think that makes a lot of sense in like some of these like bigger races that we put on. That, you know, these people are taking a big role in the planning and the implementation of these kind of specific projects. It's not just showing up.
And if it's assistant race director, it does, and this is just my opinion, instead of, okay, I know how to do finish line, I know how to do the food, they should be able to be versed in every single aspect of the event, putting it on. That's what I'm thinking. And that includes the planning, all that stuff. That would make them a really good benefit for the race. But that's just my opinion.
Cool. All right. So I will go ahead and move forward with that and put that into our policies and procedures then. Okay, so the race director meeting I mentioned before, there is going to be one on June 28th at noon at Cornelius Pass Roadhouse. I think Mark sent that out to everybody. So for anybody who can attend that, that would be great. We have a lot, we keep adding things to cover on that. So hopefully everybody can make that one. The other thing, we don't have to do it right now, but those of you who do have events, and I know some of the events have not happened yet, but we do need to start finalizing our calendar of events for 2027. It seems early, but we do need to finalize the calendar in August if we want to have a brochure ready for the October Portland Marathon Expo. So some of the dates are automatic. We know that Ralph's runs the first Saturday in January, and we know Vernonia, we know Turkey Trot, we know Pumpkin Ridge is the first Saturday in August. Those types of things are easy. But there's a couple of events that are a little bit more flexible. So if you have some events, please be thinking about the dates. I have an idea of the dates at this point, but it would be great if you all could confirm them. And we just need to have them confirmed by August. So we'd have some time, but just be thinking about that.
Tracy, did you say the RD meeting is the 28th at noon?
28th at noon. I think that's a Saturday.
Sunday.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, good.
It's a
Okay.
Sunday.
Because I work on the Saturday and I wouldn't
Yeah.
make it
Yes.
over there in time. Okay.
Yeah, the 28th was the date most people could make, so.
Okay.
Turkey trot planning, working with Mark, I think he sent an email out. He's wanting to finalize the assistant race directors or super volunteers, the leads in each area. But we haven't gotten past that. But I know we want to schedule a Zoom meeting pretty soon to start planning all of that and communicating. So if you can volunteer for a specific area, if you haven't already, please let Mark know, and hopefully we can get that going, because Turkey Trot registration is open. We have over 50 people already registered, so that's on its way. Okay, there's two big items that Carrie was working on, and she's done a fantastic job. I'm going to skip the second one. I should say there's volunteer waivers and group volunteer policies and forms. So I'm going to let Carrie kind of lead that one. Basically, this is talking about the check-in forms and the waivers that volunteers sign, the creation of the universal waiver, and having possibly the Center for Nonprofit Law look it over. There are a club attorney of record. So Carrie, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I previously sent out to the race director email essentially the updated process. We've always had a requirement to get waivers for all participants, including volunteers that individually volunteer or groups that volunteer. The challenge is we consistently have not been getting group volunteers to sign waivers in all situations. And it's a bit of a challenge because you're working with school groups often or other nonprofits where they don't always go into run sign up and go through our normal sign in where we have the electronic waiver. So what I did is I put together an updated procedure where we're providing a document that race directors can provide to whatever nonprofit they're working with. So it outlines the rules of, we really encourage you to send an adult with your students or with your group so that there's a responsible person, information for them to provide back. So we know where to send the fundraising check as a group. There's also a waiver that each race director will receive for their event that is currently private labeled for their event. It says their event name on there so that they can send those out and recruit their groups so that when they show up on race day, they have the signed waiver. And of course, if you're dealing with minors, you have to have a parent or legal guardian sign that document. So hopefully it's intended to be a help to the race directors. It does provide some additional thought process on how you train your volunteer coordinators on race day so that they know, we have people that signed up and run sign up, but we also have groups that are going to show up, or maybe individual volunteers that did not pre-register, that we need to collect these waivers. The importance of the waiver is that if we don't have them, and if something were to happen, it negates the insurance that we receive through Roadrunners Club of America. So it's actually a very, very important document. It's probably one of the more higher risk documents that if we don't get it, we have exposure. So, and that's my background in my career. So everybody needs to know I work with insurance and risk all the time. So it's, some would call me a worry wart. I'm actually trying to consider what's the risk for the organization? What's the risk for the participant, the volunteer? And really all of us, even as individual board members, there's a little bit of personal exposure that if a race does not get the required documents and, we have an issue, we all want to be protected, including our participants and our volunteers. So it's important, take a look at that. If you need me to resend it, I will. There's also a process that we've set up where at the end of your event, we will ask you that when you submit your volunteer information from your race, that you will also provide all of the participant waivers that you collected on race day. So all of those hard copy forms, those become part of the official record keeping, which we do need to have if we ever needed to go back and prove who was at our events and if there was an issue. What the volunteer coordinator will do is receive in that information and essentially reconcile. It's a check and balance. So not only do you get this at the race, but you turn it in. We will do a checks and balance on what we received. And then the volunteer coordinator in the future will then, which right now is me, but the volunteer coordinator will then request the check for the fundraising group through the treasurer and provide that information so that we have official record keeping along with requesting the check to the fundraising organization. So that's a lot of information. Go back to your email. If you don't see that in your race director inbox, let me know. I'm happy to resend it. I will work with any race director. I will sit on the phone. I will walk through a process if you need some assistance in how to incorporate that in the race. I'm happy to work with you there. And there's also resources that, you know, I'm happy to help race directors if you need some assistance in recruiting some of these groups and having some of these conversations about the importance of getting waivers and what they need to be prepared to do. Because the go forward process is that if you have somebody in a group show up and they don't have that waiver, you will not be able to let them volunteer. Okay, and we don't want to turn anybody away. I mean, that's the hard part is we need every volunteer we can get. So let me know if you have any questions on that. I don't want to overextend time on that topic, but hopefully it will be a help long term. The other piece of it that Tracy mentioned with the waiver and potentially what did you say, the nonprofit center up for law?
Yeah, Center for Nonprofit Law.
Thank you. I was getting my words mixed up. One of the things that I mentioned to Tracy just yesterday is that I actually think that it would be prudent for the club to, I don't know the last time, I know that there's been some review of legal documents. My understanding is that Dave Green, who was very involved in the club, used to provide that service for the club. I don't know how long it's been since the waiver has been reviewed, but in my process of working through this waiver procedure and actually preparing waivers for each of the events for the remainder of the year, I determined that not all of our waivers are the same in run sign up. Each race has a little bit of a different waiver. They may not be materially different in what they say, but they're not the same. And I have not taken the time to look at and read one versus the other. I just know they're different. And so my thought process is it might be prudent and good timing to have somebody from the legal profession take a current look at our waiver. I think historically we've used the stock waiver from Roadrunners Club of America. But one of the things that they mentioned at the convention the last couple of years that I've been there is that it is a stock waiver. It's something that you use as a starting point, but they encourage you to have someone look at it that is familiar with state laws in your area for terminology and things that you really need specific for your state. And I don't know the last time that took place. So I'm actually suggesting that we have that done. And at the same time, ask an attorney to draft a universal waiver that does not have to be changed for every event name. We can have one that works for everything, hopefully. And then we can have a process where you put that into run sign up and take the pressure off of the race directors for having to do any kind of a review and update of that waiver. I think there's a lot of risk with having different people adding and deleting things to a waiver that is one of the most important legal documents that we have out there. So that is my suggestion that I would like to see at some point happen for the club. So Tracy, that's a lot of information and I don't know.
And I will say, I don't think we've reviewed our waivers in years, simply because I know I've actually renewed a bunch of the events for some of our race directors who were new. And the whole waiver section is like, oh, that's our waiver. I hardly even look at it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they were looked at when they were initially set up and run sign up in 2016 or 2017 or whatever, but I'm sure most of the waivers in there have not been reviewed in years.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to plug myself here and say that I've checked my waivers for both my events and updated them every year. Actually, after going to the convention, I pulled the one from the RRCA and I cut and pasted it in, and then I put in the local, because like you have to put in like that you don't hold accountable like Washington County or the state park, right? So there is, I don't know how we do that. Like, I love what you're saying, Carrie. We have to figure out how, or a lawyer would have to figure out, like, if you have to put into your waiver something where you're not keeping that municipality or organization also liable anyway. But I have done it. So
yeah.
And
thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I would love to not have to put the names of all the different jurisdictions. I would like to come up with, see if an attorney can draft language where it just covers all of our events, so we don't have to go in and make those updates every single time. Surely we can do that, but I don't know. We can't. So I just think it's important. I think it's something that you do every few years. And, the RRCA stock waiver is a really good starting point, but does anybody really know if it covers Oregon or not? And I don't know. So.
And the Center for Nonprofit Law, the previous board had engaged them. They haven't done anything for us at this point, but I met with them back in August of 23, and they are technically our attorney of record for the club. So as a nonprofit, we can use them. I don't know what they charge. I'm sure it's not free, but if we could give them something as a starting point to look at and say, look, well, this is what our goal is. Can you, point us in the right direction or steer us? And maybe we can't have one for all of our events because we do have to do specifics. I don't know if the waiver, like you mentioned, Dual has switched locations multiple times, and the waiver said Cleveland High School. Well, it hasn't been at Cleveland High School in 10 years, I don't think. So,
but if we could start off with part of it, like the bulk part of it, could be the same for everybody, and then the bottom part could be adding all the little counties or the facilities or whatever. That would be something.
And then just reminding race directors, hey, remember to look at this part of the waiver to make sure it's still up to date. That would be good.
Yep. So that's my thing on the waivers. I do think about everybody's liability, the organization, everybody else. I spend too much time thinking about it, actually. Kind of a boring topic.
It takes all sorts of I would say people to run an organization, and we need people like you, Carrie, who pay attention to this stuff, because so many of us don't. We're just doing our own little thing over here, doing our races or doing our 1200 club or whatever, and we need to be careful of all of that. So it's definitely important. It's not the glamorous side of running a club.
No, most people see me walk in a room and they run the other direction.
Yeah.
Compliance person. So I get it.
It's important though. Thank you. The other thing that we have done is when in the volunteer section of Run Sign Up, we have added some questions. So when somebody is registering and Run Sign Up as a volunteer for an event, it will now ask them, if they are a member of a group, and if so, what group? So we can get that information and have people if they register individually. So if people register to volunteer through Run Sign Up, they will sign the waiver. It's only those that show up as a group who haven't signed up through Run Sign Up or Ultra Sign Up. Those people have not done the waivers, and those are the ones we need to collect.
So you might get Liberty High School 1, Liberty High School 2, because they're going to get how many volunteers?
You might get 10 people from Liberty High School, but you don't have their names and they don't have the waivers. So that's where we need to collect the paper ones. So
and for the race directors, you'll see that part of the paperwork that was sent out, there's actually a check-in list for your groups or other people that show up and they may offer to volunteer. And there's a question to prompt the person checking them in to mark if they have the waiver. So we've tried to think of all the different ins and outs and questions and things that come up in that process. Hopefully it's helpful.
And I also want to make sure, we don't want to turn volunteers away. I think the main reason we would turn somebody away is if there was an underage person who hadn't signed the waiver and they needed a parent or guardian to sign it for them. That's about in almost any other situation, they can just sign the waiver and go ahead and volunteer. But if a student shows up and their parent's not with them, the chaperone's not eligible to sign the waiver for them. It has to be their parent or guardian. So that's the only situation where I think we would be turning people away.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Event recaps. We had the garage inventory. Woohoo! Another glamorous part of running a club. We had quite a few people show up. It was a good group, and we had 2 or 3 people per storage unit, and they had a list of everything that was there. We do have some follow-up questions because a lot of the flags, like the start flag, the finish line flag, volunteer flag, the flags themselves were okay, but the poles were just wonky all over the place. So we're probably going to have to either purchase new ones, or for those of you who were there, I don't know if you saw them,
Okay, you know the really large sign,
call the
ORRC
big ass
sign,
banner.
the big ass banner that we put together with PVC pipe and had the ORRC logo that took forever to put together and was just a monster. That was falling apart. It was really hard to put together and nobody liked it. So Jeff Weirman purchased 2 banners that it's really cool. Basically, it's like a blind. All you do is you pull it up out of its box and stick it on a pole, and it can go up really high. There's 2 of them. They're both about 2 feet wide, I think. And you can put them together and they make one big sign, but they're super easy to use. We can make them as small or as large as we want, in little tiny boxes that you can take to your events and stuff. So what we thought about doing was actually making start and finish and volunteer signs that are like those, because you don't need to worry about poles breaking or fitting, or do we have the right poles or
Right base.
the right base, because some of the bases don't work with some of the poles and it's just a mess. So he's looking into that right now, and we have a list of the different signs that we would need. The main thing is that we would need to buy some weights, because the new one that he got is pretty light, so it was windy, it would blow over, so you want to make sure it stays upright. So that's one of the things that we're working on. Couple of things, I've emailed a couple of people just kind of touching base on some things, but it went really well.
Primarily updated.
And they're all cleaned up. And we'll be sending out a new inventory list as soon as we finalize some of the final questions and where some things are. So that went really well. Upcoming events, we have Dave's Solstice Run on June 20th. So that's coming up. I think that's coming along fine.
It's about the same.
It's about the same as last year. We're about 10 behind, but we were about, what?
4 behind.
4 behind last year. So, and last year was higher than the year before. So I think a lot of people are probably waiting to see what the weather's like, because last year it was pouring down rain. But that should be fun. Dual is set for July 21st, and that's going along well. That's going to be at Rex Putnam High School again on the other side of town. And then Carrie, Pumpkin Ridge is humming right along.
Pumpkin Ridge is coming along. We have all of our event permits approved. We're done. We're ready to go with that. Very exciting. We had a few little hiccups along the way, but we're all good. And I'm currently working on group volunteers. I have a reach out from a local private school that is wanting to do some fundraising, and I need to check back in, but she was hoping that she would maybe get us about 15 volunteers, which would be
Awesome.
awesome. So we're in a good spot. Joe's going to do the lead on the parking lot on the day of the race. He wants to learn more about the race, see different races and how they come together. So he's going to take the lead there. I'm really trying to work on taking people that I know have been in our races or are on the board that are going to be volunteering, that handle some of the more tricky course marshal spots and where we need to have some experience. And then I'm really trying to focus students either at aid stations or very close to the school. So we're doing well. We're up in our registrations, and I think I just think it's because we reduced the fees. I'm hoping we did increase last year the number of registrations, but we're up, I don't know, probably about 50 participants at this point from where we were last year. So I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that last year I think we were at 360, and I think we're hoping to be, I'd love to be at 450 to 500. I'm ordering actually 500 medals, or finisher. We're not doing true medals, but finisher awards just in anticipation for that. So
Cool.
we're doing good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I think that was all
That's
I
it.
had. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order, or anything we want for next month's meeting to bring up? Not seeing shaking your heads. No.
I have the very smallest thing.
Yes.
I'll be at Blue Lake coming up, and I ended up with 2 extra participant challenge mugs.
Oh,
Is there any value in bringing them along with me?
sure.
Bring them, and if we can take them to the expo.
We can always take them to the
Oh.
expo. Yeah.
Yeah, great idea. Okay, glad I mentioned it. I'll bring them along.
Cool.
I will say for Dave's Solstice, I went in before the meeting and I see where they've got some gaps in volunteers. I think they're doing pretty well, but I'll send out another email, some volunteers. So I'll send that out tomorrow.
Yeah, that's an easy course in terms of marshaling. So they can always do it with cones and stuff. It's not
Yeah.
one where you're going to get too lost in that one.
Yeah. They were looking pretty decent though. So
Yeah. Okay.
all right. Oh, I will say, Tracy, did you see the picture that I sent from the zoo over the weekend?
No.
So I happened to be at
Oh,
the
yes,
zoo.
I did see that one. Yes, the tent.
Okay, just a heads up, maybe totally fine, but I happened to be at the zoo. I never go to the zoo. I happened to be at the zoo on Saturday. And I was walking through the finish line area for Turkey Trot, and it is under construction. So the main finish line area was clear for traffic, but where they have the food area that we use for the finish line, it's pretty closed up, and they're putting a new overhead cover instead of the white umbrella or the white tent that they had. They're building an actual structure, which I'm sure will be fabulous when it's done. I just had this moment where I thought, wow, I wonder if that's going to impact Turkey Trot. So right now, I think if you tried to even have the event with all the partitions that are up, it would be very narrow for the finish line because it's out kind of in the walkway.
I will email the zoo and find out what's going on with that and if it's going to be done. I mean, it might be just
remember how they had the tent and then they had a gap between the tent and the elephant ear cafe? They're building that structure right up to the edge of the cafe. So that's where we would back in the truck from behind the scenes. So it may be totally fine, but I did have a moment of pause. So wow, that could be a problem. So
I will email the zoo and copy Mark on that and say, can you let us know what this situation is? And are we going to have to do something drastically different if
okay.
Thank you for sending that. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, once again, thank you everybody for everything that you're doing, and looking forward to seeing a lot of you at the RD meeting on the 28th. And to Dave's, both of those. So, and I will see you next month. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Tracy.
Yes.
Real quick. Remember I talked about how I want to put my volunteers on to run sign up?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because Dave asked me about that. He was like, the link says it's not open. And I was like, yeah, because we need to upload it onto, and Carrie said that would really help her out too. So I just think it's going to be a better tool. And then we'll have all our volunteers in the same place, our members that are already on the database. It's going to be so much better. So yeah, what is that? Just pretty simple to make permission.
We haven't done it before, but it sounds like it's pretty simple.
I think what they said is you basically create a shell for the race.
Yeah.
That you don't have you hide registration so people can't register there. So they won't find it if they're looking in Run Sign Up for Autumn Leaves, they won't find it to register there.
And what we can do is because it creates a page in Run Sign Up, is in the race information content, we can put a link to Ultra Sign Up for registration, right?
Right.
I don't even know if you'd have. I don't know if you'd even have that.
If they have,
So
yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
They do. And then in Ultra Sign Up, it says external tool. So I think in Ultra Sign Up, once I have the website, I'll just put
the link to
the link to that tool. And then on our webpage, we can have both. And I can even, if with the little blurb for the race, I can even put, registration. The registration here is only for volunteers. Go to Ultra Sign Up for, hopefully Run Sign Up won't get mad at me, but whatever.
No, they say they do that.
They do that all the time. So it's definitely doable. We just haven't done it before. So we just have to figure out how to do it. So
I think people do that for events where it's not something that people pay to go to an event, but they need volunteers for the event.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they use it for. So you don't do registration, but you can have volunteers.
So would we need to get like the Autumn Leaves or a different email address set up as like someone who can tinker with that stuff so that I can edit my volunteer list and the times and stuff like that?
What we would do is in Run Sign Up, once we set up the shell, we would add your personal email as the race director for that.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
you
got
would
it.
have that. So when you log in with your personal email to run sign up, you would look at your events and it would bring that up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, we should do that. And then I'd like to do it with HAG too. I got lots of
Yeah.
comments from people like, I can't tell what to sign up for. And I had one person who signed up for like 5 jobs because they just wanted to say they were interested in all the 5 jobs, but then it
Oh
like
no.
but then it was like I was like, I don't think you can work all these jobs. Some of them are at the same time. And so then it